Thank you so very much, Tina.
So very welcome.
And first Sunday, it's a great theme for us, this Science and Spirituality Sunday. And as I said, it's a nature of our being and of our teaching that we're in tune with this and we're the forward-looking people of it. If you will, let me give you a little bit of the history behind all this, because it's a mind shift. It's all about this evolution of consciousness. And we're taking this class, I'm teaching this class called From Whence We Came, which is all about the people who founded this religion, the people that Ernest Holmes listened to. And we're admiring this evolution of consciousness. But it starts a long while back. Originally, it starts 3,000 years ago, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But it started with the end of the Dark Ages. There was this movement called the Renaissance. And what the Renaissance really did, it awakened the science. It actually created the science. So then people started studying the external world. They started measuring and observing and correlating things. And they could make very good predictions about what would happen. So what it allowed them to do, it allowed them to pull the knowledge of the wonder of the awe of the mysteries away from the old church leaders. And then the scientific community got a little much of themselves and thought they could predict everything down to a T. And everything was going really good for them until the year 1900 hit. That is when Max Planck discovered the quantum. And quantum physics has changed that forever, because what they understood was when you get down to the quantum level, the scientists could no longer say this billiard ball hits this one and make predictions about interactions of separate particles. Because particles started jumping in and out of existence. And all the scientists could do was create these very hard mathematical equations. I remembered my quantum mechanics class in college, and I still to this day have not understood the Schrodinger wave equation. But what this technical equation does, it predicts when something goes from potentiality to reality and where it will be. And so, as I've said before, that's what our metaphysics is saying. We're standing on the precipice of our life each and every day. We're looking out. All that we see out there is a world of potentiality. And we, the powerful chooser, gets to choose what of that potentiality we focus on, and it condenses into our reality. And it's a powerful, powerful place to be. And so then the scientists got in two branches. There was the ones that said, no, it's just the material world. And then there's those that embraced it. It used to be that the scientist would be asked if he believed in God, and he would say, of course not, I'm a scientist. And then that answer changed, because the scientists would say, of course I do, I'm a scientist. Because they're seeing the interaction of the divine in this quantum level of doing. And in the meantime, what we were doing as a movement is we were putting our roots in the ground. This brave man by the name of Ralph Waldo Emerson, in the middle of the 1800s, mainly around 1840, he gave us the message to be self-reliant, to be this strong, rugged individualist that you are. Stop depending on anyone else, that you have as much a connection to the divine as anyone. And at the same time, they didn't know each other. There was this man by the name of Phineas Quimby, very uneducated man, that was out there practicing the art of mental healing, which gives us our philosophy that the mind truly does heal the body. And he didn't study a bunch of stuff. He healed himself, And then he learned how to heal by actually healing. So those are the two start of it. We needed some structure, so some brilliant and extremely powerful individuals. One was Emma Curtis Hopkins, and the other was Judge Thomas Troward. Put this all together for a great philosophy that we love and teach here every Sunday about the creative process and about all the other things that we do. And in the meantime, the scientists were split now, and the philosophers had always been split, and about what causes reality. And the materialists would say it was upward causation. There's just some happenstance. Atom gets created, it forms a molecule with other atoms, it forms a group. Some happenstance things happen. It forms organs, it forms people, it forms plants, it forms our environment. We have no control. It's like rolling the dice. And then there was this other group of philosophers that started 3,000 years ago with the ancient Hindu philosophers that believed in downward causation, that gave us this message that consciousness is the ground of all being. It gives us this message that there's something beyond the physical. And it doesn't end there, because the message is that something beyond the physical, that spiritual substance, so to speak, is actually causal, creates the physical. It all starts with consciousness. Just like our creative process goes like this. The thought impresses upon the universal law, the creative medium, and your world of effects is created. So it all starts with consciousness, and then the scientists started to prove it to themselves. And there's this concept of non-locality that was really, really important, because Einstein, in his theory of relativity told us that no magnetic wave or particle could travel faster than the speed of light. And this brilliant physicist by the name of Elaine Aspect in the 1980s, he had these two particles that would be associated with each other. And when one would change its spin or rotation, the other would naturally follow. And so what he did is he separated these particles, did an experiment, influenced one to change its rotation, and lo and behold, the other one changed its location almost instantaneously. He did the math, measured the distance, and realized that it was faster than the speed of light. Now, the scientists of the day didn't like it, because the theory of relativity is what got us to the moon. All of our science was based on it. So they did another experiment more in the mental field. They had a couple of meditators that were very much attached. And when you would impress something on one, the other one would pick it up almost immediately. And this experiment was done in Mexico. And what the professor of the experiment did is he separated the two and put the one in what's called a Faraday box. And a Faraday box has material around it where no waves of any kind can make it through. And so what they did is they put an EKG to each man head, and then they shone an intense light on the one that was outside of the box. And they measured the frequency of the EKG of the other one, who didn't see the light, and he saw there was that same click on the EKG, so he recognized it. So that tells us that consciousness is beyond the field of time and space. At least it has that potential. I'm sure there's laws are let down where things go a certain way. But that just shows you that consciousness is the ground of all being, which explains some of the ways we can have our distant healing. And the good news for us is that all we have to do is know the truth. We don't have to be with this perfect person who can show us these good energy waves, because the healing comes from us being in touch with this great consciousness. In the old Hindu tradition, always emphasized that the Brahman, or the universal consciousness, was always in touch with the Atman, or the individual consciousness. So we learned this 3,000 years ago. And the other item I want to focus on, I mentioned it earlier, is this concept of discontinuity when we get down to the quantum level. Because what happens there is all the science up to the day, before we discovered the quantum, was built on modeling things, continuous processes, nice easy transitions. And Niels Bohr gave us this concept of a quantum electron changing its state. And what would happen would be, if a quantum electron gets a certain amount of energy, it goes to the next field. But unlike our earlier thinking and our intuitive thinking, it doesn't slowly make its transition. So when it just sits where it is, you can observe it where it is, it gains energy until it has enough energy. It literally disappears from where it is, and it reappears from where it was predicted to be. So this is this concept of, so we throw some of our stuff out that we've done, but all it's doing, it's reinforcing our own belief system, our own belief that is, as Wayne Dyer says, what you think about expands. And to change our life, truly it's all about changing our thinking. And I could be up here all day talking to you, but I'm going to let Nicole tell you a little bit on the continuation of the story. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to ask you a question. Can you hear that? Can you hear that music? Because you would need an instrument to be able to hear music, yes? Yes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Battery 8%. Connected to iPhone 6.
Can you hear music now? Can you feel the music?
Yeah.
Come on, let me know you feel the music. Okay, don't get too into it. We still have to have a talk. So we used an instrument, and we experienced something that we wouldn't have experienced before, yes? Like, I don't know about you, but I don't think Bob Marley's going to come and sing for me, like, live in person until I make my transition, right? And just in that same way, there was a resonance. We related to the feeling, to the sound. Who here's energy was shifted by that music? Okay. And so this is what is known as morphic resonance. It's the law of resonance. And what it means is that when a higher vibrational frequency meets a lower vibrational frequency, the higher vibrational frequency can either raise it up or push it down. And so in this same way, we as a self, we as an organism, we are the instruments of spirit. We are the instruments of spirit. When we project our energy, our focus, our intention, our thoughts, we affect other living organisms. Everything that is living lives within a vibrational frequency that it is created in. And everything else is able to have an influence over it. We are always able to have an influence over each other. We can either heal each other or poison each other. And so you can look at it from the ancient wisdom keepers who have been knowing this through faith their whole lives, or you can look at it from a very scientific, evidence-based reality. But either way, this is how science and spirituality converge for the evolution of the self. This is why the self evolves. There's a story. Have you ever seen The Secret Lives of Plants? Yeah, some of you? There's a scientist in there. He was an FBI agent turned scientist. And you'll kind of get that in a minute. And so he decides to do an experiment on, what are those plants called? Philodendrons. Okay. Philodendrons. Couldn't have been a rose. Okay. And what he does is he places a lie detector test on a philodendron. And he puts it in a room. And this is like all videotaped. And then he goes into another room. And he closes his eyes and he holds this intention, and he's just looking at the philodendron, and he's saying to it out loud or within himself, I am going to burn one of your leaves with my cigarette. And at that very I don't know, that was bizarre, of a thing to have to say, but at that very moment, in the room where the philodendron is on the lie detector test, a big spike occurs on the graph. And he thought, oh my gosh, it really did do something. So then they did it again and again and again and 100 times over in different ways to make sure that what they were seeing was real, was what was happening. And time after time after time, it was proven and shown, just like what Reverend Michael said with the meditators, that indeed, we, as living organisms, have a definite effect on each other. A definite effect. Our vibrational frequencies resonate, and they leave residue on other organisms. Which means when you're looking at plants, when you're looking at humans, when you're looking at animals, whatever the feeling is within you, whether it be an open heart and an open mind, or resentment and irritation and frustration, we are not only hurting and healing ourselves, but we are also killing or bringing more life to those other organisms. And it's said all over in scripture, in philosophy, and mysticism. Let me show you just a few examples. In Proverbs, it says, for as he thinks in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. The morsels you have eaten, you will vomit up. And what does that mean? That means that when we give to someone and our energy isn't in it, our intention for their good isn't in it, that we're just poisoning them and ourselves. Yes, we can offer them the food, but how much resentment do we have for giving it to them? And then, if you're into philosophy, Epictetus, he was I might be saying his name wrong, but he was a Stoic philosopher. If you're into Stoicism, he's really amazing. He says, the proper work of the mind is the exercise of choice, refusal, yearning, longing, repulsion, and purpose and assent. And he says, what then can pollute our mind? What then can clog our mind? Nothing but its own corrupt decisions. When we're working on ourselves, when we're doing our spiritual practice, we're exercising our minds and our hearts, what then can clog us up but our own corrupt decisions? And if you're more of a mystic, the Kabbalah, which is the mystical scriptures of the Judaism, in here, listen, this is sweet. It says, With each experience, we grow and become more aware of our inner beauty. Ultimately, we are truly our own leaders. We lead the connection and flow of life that is our inheritance. Just this last part. We lead the connection and flow of life that is our inheritance. We lead the connection and flow of life that is our divine inheritance. We are the instruments of spirit, of a divine something. And we, being the most self-conscious organisms on this earth so far as I've learned, we lead the way for all other living sources to be connected, to be whole, to be reborn in health and newness. And so how do we get to the point to where our hearts and our minds can be clear enough to be that transmitter, that can be that vital force that is an instrument? Because we know that when we get to that point, we're listening to our intuition. Who here has intuition? Who here listens to it and does it exactly when they hear it and they just go for it? That is spirit saying, giving direction. Like, listen, it's really okay. If you fall down, that's okay. I have a new motto, 6 fails to 1 success. Which isn't real, but it reminds me that it's really okay. It's okay. But we receive messages from spirit, and the more refined our sense is, the more clearly our messages come. We get messages through intuition, through meditation, through our dreams, through other people, through ahas. And many people believe that we have 5 senses. And some people with a little bit opened minds believe we have 6. I believe our senses are infinite. And the more we upgrade ourselves, like how many of you update your phone? How many of you upgrade your phone? Yes? And you use it as an instrument for your life, yes? And so our job, our role, is to continue to refine and upgrade ourself. Not for ourselves, but because we are an instrument of healing, of power, of love, and all that vibrational frequency. The law of resonance says that all other life forms will rise up to the level of our frequency. It's as if we want to eradicate pollution and greenhouse gases in our environment. And so we get electric cars and we become vegan, or we recycle our trash, and yet we're polluted within. You're kind of canceling yourself out there. We have to begin with our inner pollution that is also killing, poisoning, or healing other living organisms. We have to begin within and move outward. And so what I invite us to do is really pay attention. You don't have to lie to yourself. Just pay attention. Where is this frustrated energy coming from? Where is this irritation? How, in this moment, can I release all of my judgments and opinions long enough to just give some loving kindness to someone else? This is our role as these divine spiritual beings. We're not spiritual beings living in a human world, or whatever they call that, human beings living. We are spiritual beings living in a spiritual world that is sacred. And we know, because we listen to our head brain and our heart brain and our gut brain, and allow them together to cultivate and say, this is mine to do. This is what I've been called for. Not for some special secret purpose, but to be the healing resonance and residue of this earth, of this world. Do you agree? Okay, let's pray. And what I know right now, right here, when I close my eyes and go within my body, is that I feel that vibrational energy. I feel each and every one of these divine beloveds, my gods that I pray to, my gods that I lift up, my gods that are holding me up. What I know is that we are on the same vibrational frequency, that we are rising, rising, rising strong. And I know that in and of itself, right here in this moment, heals all life around us. I invite us to imagine and to know right now that we pulse outward into the world. That every mile, every road, ever expanding, we are leaving the residue of our energy, our healing, loving energy on this beautiful earth. Being Spirit's instruments, I know that there is good within us, and we are about doing it. And so it is.